welcome from the Women's Entrepreneurial Opportunity Project Incorporated, WEOP, and we are excited to have what we call our first Pacesetter Lab. Our Pacesetter Lab is designed specifically to provide hands-on experience and to really talk about the things that we discussed during our primetime contract class, which we like to focus on how to guide you through federal contracting. And with our Pacesetter Labs, we're really designed to provide you with more hands-on training. We know that once you take that primetime course, that it does require you to study. It requires you to go into different databases. So with our Pacesetter Labs, it's kind of an extension of our primetime contract training program. And we have a wonderful speaker with us, Varsha Singh, and she's one of WEOP's business advisors. Varsha Singh has been working with the B Group Incorporated. She's been with that company for 5 years, managing federal contracts and programs. She's also a CAP person, a side note. But she's, as one of the WEOP's business advisors, she's basically helps walk our women through understanding the intricacies of federal contracting and understanding that the federal databases are so transparent that we can gather market information, we can make reports, we can get so much information that will help us secure potential federal contracts. And one of the things I want to say about the topic that we're focusing on today, which is how to utilize forecast reports to identify prospective opportunities, is the fact that we hone in on the point that you can win a federal contract without actually doing a bid. So throughout our discussion, Varsha is going to talk us through a great presentation. I'm happy that she's joined WEOP as what we call a business advisor. And we'll be providing you with a series of these great informational sessions to keep walking you through the process. So Varsha, I'm going to turn it over to you so you can get started. We don't have a lot of time. We have exactly an hour. If anybody has any questions, please use the Q&A to ask any questions of Varsha. And we can just go ahead and get started with this great information. So Varsha, I turn it over to you. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you so much, Edward, for the great opportunity, and I'm really, really happy to be here. Hello, everybody. As Antoinette mentioned, I've been managing the federal contracts for the past 5 years. I've been working in the capacity of the solutions manager. I've been working in the capacity of program manager. And I have been working actually in a combination of both federal and state. So we do have quite a few, about 36 state agencies that are currently our customers, and then we are making our headways towards the federal agencies. So without further delay, let's sort of go through some of the very main points that we have discussed in terms of understanding how to go about accessing the information and how to really make sense of that information. Because some of the main pillars that we are trying to focus on here is why we are doing what we are doing, how to access the information, and how to really make sense of that information. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Let's see. First of all, when you are looking to really go into a market and you're looking to engage with the customer, you're looking to identify the opportunity, you really have to make sure, are you ready to take on that opportunity? And that's exactly what we mean by contract ready. Have your information handy, have everything that you would that could help you to access that contract information, could help you have that contract, have those informations handy. Understand your customer. I cannot emphasize on it enough how important it is for you to understand exactly who you are going to sell your services to. Without that understanding, there is a huge gap that I think most of the companies have, that they have something that they want to sell. They have services, they have products, and their product might be great, but when it comes to positioning that product and service towards the market, it does become a challenge. So we will try to give you a few pointers to understand how you can better position your services and your product. Now, federal as a space could be pretty daunting in terms of the amount of information that is available and how to really access that. So we'll understand how to look through those procurement patterns, how to access the available information and go from there. Forecast report, we'll go through how exactly forecast reports are built, what are the components of it, how to understand those reports. Once you have the forecast report, for it to be really helpful to you, you should be able to read it. You should be able to make sense of the information. So we'll look through that as well. And lastly, I know the process could be very daunting, as I said. Stay focused, stay relevant. I think that's the key to kind of make a place for yourself in the federal market. Now, as I was talking about contract ready, so first of all, the company profile. I know, I mean, we all would have it as an entrepreneur, but some of the things that federal likes to look at are registration information, your tax ID numbers, Duns and Bradstreet number. If you have it, amazing. If you don't have it, I would suggest that you go and kind of, procure one. So what you can do, there are websites available. So you'll go through the link over here, and then you can request to get a Duns and Bradstreet number. And that is one piece of information that would be very helpful to you in any of the federal contract or public sector contracts in general. Similarly, cage code certifications, just make sure that you have all the information handy. One of the other things that I've seen a lot of businesses struggling, including ours, is insurance requirement. Sometimes, depending upon the size of the contract, the insurance requirement could be pretty large. I have seen insurance requirements going all the way up to $20 million, for 1 year, and then kind of, multiplies depending upon how large the contract is. So you have to really see whether or not you have this requirement, because some of the agencies do request it before the contract begins. Some of the agencies request it after they commence the contract. So make sure that either you have it or you have the capability to acquire it. Digital presence, I think COVID has all pushed us to have that digital presence, and agencies, just like any other customer, will look you up. They will look at your website, they will look at your LinkedIn pages, they would want to know who you are. And as much information as you have available digitally about your company, about your business, about your service and product, better it is going to be. Work samples. This is something that you would need pretty much on every contract, because you'll have to showcase what has been the real application of your service and product. You have to really show that it works in the real time. So work samples are very important. A lot of companies like to put that up on the website. They like to put that up as document on their website. You can have multiple innovative ways to do that. Certifications, I think these are a great tool for small businesses. Maintaining your certifications or meeting the certification qualification criteria, because some of the contracts may not specifically mention about you having certifications, but they would give you the size standard requirement if they are set aside for small businesses and such. So making sure that you are maintaining your certifications with SBA. As a woman-owned small business or a small business, diverse business, please make sure that you do have those certifications up and ready and available, renewed at all times. Sometimes I've seen it happening that you would like, okay, my certification is ending in December. I'm just going to renew it 15 days prior. And guess what? You had a contract deadline and the certification renewal took a month, and then you work without the certification in that duration. So just make sure that you're taking care of those small things. That's what we are trying to say when we say dot your I's and cross your T's, just making sure the basic information is available. NICS code, needless to say, are very important. They help the customer identify and categorize your services. They are receiving requests from hundreds of different companies and vendors. They cannot go through each of those service paragraphs, that the piece of information that you'll provide them. So NICS code help them identify which category of service that you fall in. There is a website that you could go to and you can find. Sometimes it may happen. Let me just show you. For example, if you're just going here and you mention the codes, I'm just going to take this as an example. So 5415 is actually for all services related to computer. Sometimes people just mention 541511, and that will just show one service category. All of these are related. So just make sure that you have the category as well as subcategory of your services listed whenever you are either sending your capability or you are registering your company anywhere. The same goes for federal supply classification codes. These are different than NICS, so you might see different code numbers here, but you'd also have the website available for this. You could go over here, you can search there, as you can see, is very extensive list. You can go here and you can see which service category your services fall in. And once again, register for SAM, System for Award Management, is a free service. There is no charge for this. And federal agencies often at times, they would want to, for any of the contract, they would go back to the SAM system and see if your information is available there. So it's a very important task that each of the companies, they have to do before getting into any sort of contract or relationship with the federal agencies. And this system itself, it provides you a lot of good information, but having this registration itself is going to be very, very helpful. So just make sure that you are able to kind of, you can register an entity, you can just go from here. The system is pretty easy to access. So that is as far as the basic information and the details that you would need before even you can think about getting into the federal space. So I think that is very important. And I'm going to go ahead and move on to the next screen. Now, all of these informations are going to help you actually be contract ready. What we mean by it, look for minimum requirements, right? Before even getting onto a contract, you have to understand what is it that you would require at the bare minimum level in order to kind of, be eligible to participate in that contract. Because many a times you may not even meet the eligibility criteria. So it's very important to check for that. If you're targeting to kind of, provide services to any of the federal agencies where they necessarily require facility clearance, you have to make sure either you can obtain it or your facility is ready to obtain that certification. Work history, insurance, financials are also some of the criteria that agencies like to put on a lot of their contracts. So just make sure that on those grounds you're solid. The other thing that we can do, and we really don't have to look at this specific contract for it. As I was mentioning earlier, it is very, very important to understand what are the services that you're providing and how it is really helping the customer. I have seen so many cases where you would go to a contracting officer, and this has happened in real time with me. I think it was New York Department of Health I was working with. They are one of our current customer, and we were trying to sort of upsell a service. And it was happening. I went to the contracting officer, good relationship with the individual, and they were like, Varsha, why don't you tell us, how does it help us? I may not be able to lay out the entire organizational structure for you, but why don't you tell us, how do you think it can help us? And then let me help you to identify the right opportunity. So again, your pitch has to be very, very good. You have to really understand for this agency why your solution helps. So although it may not look, very important piece, because we often get on to, okay, let me understand what document, et cetera, but this is also very important. Again, catch up the pace with the industry. I've seen agencies where the leadership has changed at least twice in 1 year. So you have to see, who is coming in, who is going out, how the agencies are changing. I have seen agencies revamping their entire contracting methods. We were working with this, one of the federally funded agencies out in DC, that's the Washington Metropolitan Transit Area Authority. They maintain the subways and the bus system in DC and Maryland area. They had a very kind of, widely spread contract vehicle. They had a separate contract for the networking and for cloud app security, for information technology, for procurement of other kind of services. They came up with 3 independent contracts where they consolidated everything. They removed all the vendors. They brought in 3 new larger contracts, and needless to say, a lot of things changed, leadership changed. The vendors that were working there for many years, that changed. So understanding what's going on in the industry is very, very important. LinkedIn is a great source. I think agencies are becoming more active in those kind of photos. Potential scale of opportunities really in terms of understanding how large of a contract you can target, and then kind of, backwards, work backwards from there. Invest time in understanding your client is very important so that you can position your services really well according to that. Sometimes I do understand the fascination behind getting on and becoming a prime contractor, but I think at the same time, companies should be open to subcontracting opportunities. It's a very good way to get your work started and create an identity for yourself in the federal space if you don't have a lot of experience working with the government. Subcontracting opportunities, we'll talk more in depth about it later in the presentation, but typically the agency would have certain percentage dedicated towards SBA utilization or certification of the diverse companies utilization. And you can utilize that opportunity by connecting with the prime contractors because they necessarily have to have a small business with them while they submit their proposal, because agencies rank them based on that collaboration. So there is a system called Subnet. Subnet is basically, just consider this as a database where you can go in, you can select a state. I'm just going to select Alaska. And you can see what are the companies available there that are seeking the subcontracting opportunity. Once again, this system is used by both the small businesses, the prime contractors. Small businesses typically use this system to let other companies know that, hey, we are available here and we are here to provide services as a small business. And prime contractors typically go through this information or look through it to connect with the small businesses that they may want to include in their proposals. So this could be a very good portal to sort of explore. SBA resources also gives you a lot of information in terms of how do you connect with prime contractors, how do you look for prime sub opportunities, how do you look for where there is a mandated utilization goal for the small businesses. So you could definitely do that. Now, as far as the procurement patterns are concerned, before we really get into the forecast report, I think we have to understand how the procurements happen. A very good way to begin with this is to look at the past procurement reports. Big question, where do you find it? It's very easy. Every agency has it typically on their website. So if you're looking for a specific agency, you could go there. You could just type in their search box, for the past procurement reports. You could have the access to that information, and that should allow you to understand a few things. You would be able to see what has been the pattern of procurement in terms of nature of service. What is it that they buy and how do they like to buy it? A lot of time you will see companies having quite a few sole source procurement. That means they like to engage with only one vendor for a specific kind of contract. So, you can really read through how the agencies like to work, and you can really look through, what would be a good position for yourself to go ahead and talk to the agency. So they help us understand what has been a historical pattern and what may work with them. Because it's rarely the case that federal agencies completely change the way that they like to work. If they have been more focused on sole source, the likelihood is that they are going to be more focused on that, which means high level of competition on one single contract. One of the other thing is some companies like to only have a very consolidated list of vendors, which means their contracts are going to be typically large. Their vendor pool is going to be small. Again, high competition, very large vendors are typically the prime contractor there. And you should be able to see whether or not that kind of size of opportunity, is your business really ready for it? Because it comes with its own minimum requirement criteria, right? The contract may be spread out with $100 million for 5 years. You really have to see, are you going to be able to supply that kind of service? Once again, a lot of agencies have a minimum criteria where the contract value cannot exceed the 30% of your total business value. So, there are a lot of intricacies to that, as Antoinette was mentioning. But understanding the previous procurement reports is very important. Again, this also helps you understand, are you going to be a subcontractor in one of the opportunity, or you are going to go as a prime, you need additional support, should you team up, should you go as a joint venture? So it helps you understand, a few different aspects of looking at the contract. Now, let's really dig into what are the forecast report. So forecast reports, and this is, I think, federal and especially public sector agencies in general, they are pretty amazing in terms of releasing all that information. So you may not have that clear access in some of the commercial domains, but federal, what they do, they have usually PDF files of consisting the entire annual projection of the procurements that they are going to have. So it lists typically what they are going to buy, what kind of contracts is going to come up, a sort of, a tentative date of that contract release or that proposal or the bid release. So you do get quite a few informations on that forecast. Is this going to be a set aside? Is that going to be a sole source? Are they looking for multiple awards in that? So it's very good information for companies to have before they can really go in and bid for that particular contract. Some of the formats that you usually see. So they have, all agencies, they have their own formats. Some may be very easy to read, some may be slightly more complex. But from an overview, we typically have who is going to be the contracting officer in this, who is going to be the small businesses, who's going to be the person responsible for incorporating small businesses, how to market information, who to connect if you have the capability matching to this procurement. They would typically give you that information. And I think that information, a lot of entrepreneurs will see a value in it. They also give the description of forecast categories as to, what are the services? What is it that they are trying to buy from this procurement? A lot of agencies, especially HUD in this case, we have included a sample report from them too. Housing and Urban Development, they have done an amazing job in terms of really educating the companies. What do they mean by a certain abbreviation? They may just mention hub zone. You have to really understand what a hub zone company is. They may mention SDVOB, you have to understand that. They may mention source to source. You have to understand what exactly that notice, mean. So they have a lot of good information in terms of forecast report and the pattern. And so it becomes very easy to understand for whoever is reading it, for the first time, especially. Now, let's look through when we are talking about the forecast report and when we are looking at the forecast report, where exactly can we find it? And I think this is going to be the crux of this entire webinar. Where to find the forecast report? There are two ways of doing it. The simplest way we will look here. The other way is that all the agencies on their website, they have the forecast report. Either it is going to be under the tab where they say how to do business with us, or you can just search it on their search bar because the websites are typically very, very extensive. So let's look through this one in our case. Acquisition.gov is where you can really see the procurement of a lot of agencies, although it has changed slightly, as compared to what it previously was. Here, typically, you should see all the agencies and their forecast report. For example, if you're looking for a Department of Housing and Urban Development, you can click on the forecast report. It should typically take you to the page where their forecast report is. It can be in the downloadable format. It could be just an anchor page within this page. So you can just scroll it down here. But in most of the cases, you should be able to download those. So you can get the forecast report here. Anthony, what do you think? Should we go through the forecast report first and maybe then go through the pointers? What do you think about it? Sorry, I cannot hear you.
We have a guest with us as well, Siobhan. She's one of our primetime.
Hi, Siobhan.
Hey, Siobhan. So I was thinking that, forecast reports are very, very important. It may be that
I'm sorry, I was muted.
And Siobhan, what would be helpful for you? Because I know in class, we talk a lot about the forecast reports. And I know a source of contention for a lot of the entrepreneurs is they have to muddle through a lot of information. Mm-hmm. So we're trying to get a strategy where they can actually maybe go to forecast reports of the agencies that are directly purchasing their goods and services. But just what would be helpful for you, Siobhan, in terms of understanding how to navigate through all this information?
I would say how to best filter through a lot of those different reports to find who is hiring for my NAICS codes, one. Two, where to find what they actually awarded the prior primes or subcontractors, because I understand that, like, for instance, the government may say we have $4 million for this. Just because they have allocated 4 million doesn't mean that's what they're paying the contractors. So is there a place on the GSA schedule or any other website database that we can actually see what that person was awarded and what their bid looked like? I know there are some places that show that and some that don't, but mostly filtering through to find exactly what we need, because this is very time consuming for me as a business owner. And it takes me days and weeks to comb through this, because this is not what I specialize in. I'm a corporate event planner. So I would like to be able to find the information I need, find the people, find the numbers, because that's important, and know how to properly approach a contracting officer when it comes down to putting in my bid for a large contract, but not knowing what the budget is, what they've paid people in the past. Where do I find that is what I would like to know. Thank you for asking.
And Varsha, I have a strategy that, and I want to get your input on this as well, because
Sure.
one of the things that I would recommend, and Varsha, you can kind of echo, maybe you can go to GSA and look at this. One of the things that I tell my students is to go to GSA e-library and then put in an actual NACES code, which Varsha, if you can go there real quick. And when we put in an actual NACES code, all these companies, so we go to GSA e-library as a strategy, because we want to find the federal agencies that are basically procuring services in that specific NACES code, right? Siobhan? Siobhan?
Yes, I'm sorry, my phone just rang. I'm sorry.
What's your NACES? Give me your NACES code. What's your NACES code? The primary one you use.
5912 561920.
56192. Oh,
I believe that's it. Yep, that's it.
Let's go.
Thank you. Does it say no?
You see that there are contractors with a multiple award schedule in this one.
So this is Varsha, this is where the research would come in, some of it that pinpoint some agencies. So for example, let's click on an agency, Varsha.
Let's do that. Let's click on this one. The name is pretty catchy. Okay, there you go.
And which is in answer to one of the questions you had about pricing. It may be in their technical proposal. Yeah, so Varsha, go ahead and explain the whole how this could be.
Let me see. So they have on page 28. Let me see if I could go directly. Okay, they have, yeah. Okay. Oh, wow. Let me see if I can get that. Okay, there you go. So typically in the proposals, you would see what has been exactly the entire proposal, right? It's all public information, so you should be able to access this in most of the cases. Okay. And you do have the pricing list. And along with the pricing list, they also mention, let's just say if you're providing professional services, right? They will mention the qualifications of the job category that they're mentioning. For example, let's go here, and I might have to turn the page again. There you go, right? They are talking about a documentation specialist. They will really go in and mention what kind of skill set that this person would have and how much they are going to really charge for it. So this becomes a very good reference point that, okay, if the person has to have these kind of skill set, this is the charge that you're looking at. And then they also give a tiered pricing. So first year, this is going to be there. Second year, you are going to increase rate. I think here they have done it by 50 cents. And then the third year is going to be increasing, fourth year, fifth year. So you get a very good idea in terms of how the pricing increases as the time goes by. So you can get a lot of good information from here.
Okay.
And then you can look at it. And if you go to the list, it may not, like, for example, program manager, supervisor, and every company charges kind of but they're all kind of, Varsha, what you kind of standard. Because I tell our students to go through the look at the companies that are doing business with their in their NACES code, look at those technical proposals to get an idea of what their pricing is the federal government. Now the federal government pays more than private sector in some cases.
They do. In fact, especially in terms of information technology. Most of the companies, and I would just take reference of the larger corporations, for example, Deloitte and EY and Infosys, we have looked through the price categories of those companies. Most of the time, the kind of rates that they have, if other companies sort of, putting in their proposal, they would just charge a little bit lesser than that, because you have to also understand that that's the company that's charging for the brand value too. But you get the idea. Usually the average of those number is very close to what you would submit anyway.
Varsha, let's go to an events planning company.
And I want to add that I think Siobhan mentioned that she wanted to know who got the contract in the past and how much the contract will work.
Yes.
You cross-section that with the FPDs, look up their particular company and look at and search the company, see what a contract awarded and the value of their contracts.
So
well, I do have something similar. That report may be very extensive, but I'm gonna go ahead and pull that up. So let's see. Okay, this is not it. Okay, there you go. Yeah. So this is just an example again. This is from Missile Defense Agency. So in a lot of the cases, agencies would typically share the past procurement report, or they could just club it with the forecast, right? Because when they are presenting the forecast, they have to also mention something that has happened over the period of time. Let us say talk about financial year of this year. So this is the report that we can pull up, and usually the businesses mention, for example, what was the contract number? This is a very good reference point. You can go in the system, you can check that this was the contract, and usually in most of the cases, you should be able to access what proposal was submitted, because they, federal agencies or public sector agencies, they usually put that up as a public information if the company is selected.
So where do I first, Varsha, am I saying your name right? Is it Varsha?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. Thank you, Varsha. Matter of fact, let me turn my video on, because I'm looking at you, but you can't see me.
I know. There you go.
Yes, my question is, that is for the teams management support. That's a specific sector in government, right? Okay, so do I have to, I'm trying to process, where do I find this? So this is off of what database, in where, like, how do I trace the steps to where you're finding this information?
Okay, so what you are asking me is, how do you find a centralized repository of all the agencies that are procuring those services that you're providing, and what kind of procurement that they have done in the past for that service?
Correct. That, I guess that would be under my NAICS codes in a sense. Yes, because this looks like everything that the teams sector has done, which is great. But where do I find that for what I do versus having to sift through 100 pages of everything that they've paid for in the last year?
Right. In my opinion, I mean, I personally have not come across a centralized repository, so to speak, other than the GSA, because GSA, what they would do, they would typically list out all the contracts where the procurement has been done through GSA. GSA is a contract vehicle, right? Agencies have their own contract vehicles where they can procure either directly from the agency, or they can have their own different contract. So the best bet and most informative answer you would get is from the research on a particular agency. Let's just say if you're targeting a particular agency, right? Going to their previous procurement, going to their past procurements, and then look through how they have procured certain things. For example, if I'm planning to provide my services to this agency, Missile Defense Agency, right? Usually their report would contain what kind of NAICS code they buy. For example, let me go here. Let me see if this information is still available, or I'll have to look through another one. Okay, there you go. So usually you will see that either they would have a small business set aside, or they would give you a list of NAICS code that they primarily purchase. For example, let's look at this one. So they would give you usually, and again, this is the research that I've done on the individual agency. They would give you the NAICS code that they purchase most of the time. And looking at that, you can basically just keep them in your list or strike them out depending upon whether or not they purchase what you sell. The other thing that you can get in the same information is how they have done some of the procurement that they have done in the past, right? They, for example, this procurement and period performance has already been done. So you can see what kind of goal there was. This looks like a set aside for the service and veteran, service disabled veteran business.
Mhm.
So you can get those kind of information. I would suggest to research the agency individually that you're trying to offer the services to. But Antoinette, if you would know of any centralized database where they could get all the information with the mixed code in one place.
No, you almost have to do the research to get the
Right.
information. And a way like that I, try to bypass is going to the GSA library, looking at the actual, to see if they secured a contract, and then trying to see who the contracting officer is to see that like GSA buys X, Y, and Z. Because, a lot of times you just have to dig into these databases, and I know it's time consuming. So it might be that a business owner hires a research associate at maybe $20 an hour to do some of that research to get this information, because once you get it, it's invaluable, because then that provides you with market to who to market your services to.
Mhm.
They do have databases that kind of, and I've researched even purchasing databases, but they still take you through a lot of information before you get to the meat of what you need. That's the only problem with some of this.
Yeah.
But once you find that agency, it's gold, because then you can really stick with that agency. But I would say that the luckiest ones that we've had is going to GSA e-library, looking at all the companies, researching those companies and who's actually giving them contracts. Might be the easiest way to do it, because that list that when we looked at your NACES code, there were only like on that list, I think about 35 companies.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And that could be a start. That's manageable. That could be a start. You could tell somebody specifically. Can we go back to the GSA e-library real quick? Because you
Sure.
could tell somebody specifically what, for example, you could have your research person say, hey, here's the list. I want you to go to, for example, let's go to corporate events and occasions.
Okay, they don't have their price list here.
But we noticed that they do have a contract that's ending in 2041. And GSA, they got the contract from Reed Erickson from GSA. So we know that GSA is purchasing your type of services. And we know that this particular person is, and that person is a small business, woman owned, they're WSB. So it might be that you even reach out to Reed Erickson, or you might try to, there's the contract number. Can we cross-reference that contract number, Varsha? As an
So
example,
we could do that.
Let's cross-reference that contract number.
And what about going into FPDS and looking up that particular contract person, and that would tell you the contracts they received and how much they received them for, right?
Yeah, but they're phasing out FPDS too.
Have they phased them out yet?
We could see.
Yeah. Because when I look up a company, I go into FPDS and then I can view the contract and how much the contract amount was for when the contract ended. I did that yesterday for Enterprise. Because we're interested in getting training contracts. So what I did was I pulled up a company called Enterprise that got training contracts. And then I went into FPDS and I put their name in, and I was able to view how much they received and when their contract ended for that particular category for business development and training.
Interesting.
So Varsha, what are you doing now?
Okay, so sometimes all the contract information, because, right, I mean, you could get the procurement information, like the bid, the request for proposal for that contract, but whether or not the contract is going to be up for the read for the other people, that really depends on the agencies. Sometimes, for example, in this case, I cannot look at the entire contract that is executed with this company. It looks like it's a sole source. That means only one company is providing information on this contract. So very likely the contract is executed between the agency and this company. They may or may not choose to share that contract information. But I think once you get the hold of the contracting officer, for example, the other page that we have seen, I think Reed, you could get in touch with the contracting officer and you kind of inquire more about the contract. Typically, they take 24 to 48 hours to respond to public inquiries. That's what it goes under. And you can usually get the copy of the contract to review.
And Varsha, let's go to fpds.gov real quick to take narrative strategy. Let's look up because we might be able to, I think it's still up. I know
Is this the one that you're referring to?
No, Federal Procurement Data System, fpds.gov. Yes. And let's let's cross-reference the name of the company. What was the name of the company we?
Corporate events and occasions.
Let's take it from here.
Okay.
Oh, no results found. Oh,
There you go.
and
Oh,
do,
wow.
Let's
Do
go
they
to the right side, date sign, so we can get the
do
latest.
date sign. Do date signs.
From the right side descending, let's do date sign.
And that'll show the most recent ones. Come down and see what's a short order through date sign. That'll show the most recent ones. Click on date signs. Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
Now click on this is the last contract she got. Go to the number she got. She hadn't got any money yet. Go down and find the she.
No, go to view, go to the top one and go to view because the money might come up when you view it.
I was gonna say, they all say 0.
So go to view. No, go into it. Let's go to view real quick.
Let's look at this.
Okay, you see the amount there is an estimated value of $500,000.
Okay.
And see there, women-owned small business, awards. And if you go down, you could, and you see the contracting officer at the top as well. Let me see if it's a sole source like Varsha was saying.
And so
Let's see.
look up because I'm looking up who got business development contracts and who awarded and how much money they've received. And this is what I look at.
Fixed price with economic price adjustment.
Mhm.
Okay, and go down further. They have.
And it will tell you.
Oh, there you go. Okay.
Okay, so they're a convention and trade show organizer.
That's me.
So that's a great lead.
Yep.
Reed Erickson. So it's a different person that was on the other website. It's not the same name.
Yes.
Right. This is the person that actually gave her the contract, right, Varsha? The name of.
Yeah, go to the top. Go to the top of this. Go to the top of this. Okay, we have prepared user system added GSA.
Mhm.
This is going to give you the system admin information. I think the information that that should help us is the contracting officer.
Yeah.
It's right here. You should see the purchaser information right here.
Mhm.
And you should also see here, contract marketing data.
Okay.
Wow. Okay.
Yep.
So that's what you call Varsha agreement. This is what you call a lead. Because
Right.
you know, if that person's giving out $500,000 contracts for convention and trade show organizers, then that might be a way that's a viable lead for you to reach out to that particular person. And you can get one or two of those, and it might be that you negotiate. And that's the whole negotiated sole source for, because it looks like that person's women-owned business, women-owned small business, etc. So it's finding it's almost like if you don't have a lot of time, find 2 or 3 good leads, put that on your list. And when you get exhausted, just go back and get 2 or 3 more. Don't spend, see, sometimes we think that we have to spend the entire day going through a list and getting 10. Just get 2 or 3 and work them until you're exhausted. Go back and get 2 or 3 more and make it a point. Like I have entrepreneurs that may set aside an hour a week to do this. Because, but sometimes if you just pound yourself, you are going to get exhausted doing it. So why don't you take that kind of strategy?
Yeah.
And then that's manageable. You could do that while you watch TV. Hey, I'm just gonna pull out a few names. Eric, he gave, and then you write it down, because when you call those contracting officers, you say, I noticed that such and such procured a contract. I'm a convention and trade show organizer. You do your research, you go with that information. It makes you look so good. And Varsha, would you not agree?
I would agree with that. And I would also say that procurement officers or contracting officers, they are actually looking forward to receiving information that you are presenting after a lot of research that, hey, I looked through that you probably have done a, set aside procurement from a woman-owned company. And this is what I have. And I would like to know more about the upcoming procurement and how could I represent my company's services to you and look through some of the possible opportunities. And similarly, I would also say, right, I mean, this kind of research might look like that it doesn't have a head and a tail. And I wish it had a very standard process for the research, but unfortunately, it doesn't have that. So as soon as you find a company that is providing services in your domain, or you look at the next code in this library and you find the companies providing similar kind of services, You
Mhm.
can go through it, look through all the information, see the information that is important to you. For example, we just saw how large is the contract and who is the contracting officer, and sort of kind of, go from there. Because once you have that lead, I think all the other things would sort of, come together.
Okay.
And I want to make also, sometimes when I was looking at HUD forecasting report, they actually
Mhm.
who got the contract before and how much the contract was for. So some
Right.
forecast reports has that information in there as well. Like when it's re-award or recompete, they will put down who has the contract right now as well. And that could be a good lead because somebody has the contract, they have to subcontract out as well.
Right.
So,
So I just pulled up this. Sorry, go ahead. And
go ahead, Varsha. I was going to turn it over to you so you can kind of explain what
Right.
it is. Okay.
Okay. All right. So since we're already kind of, reaching the end of our webinar, so I'm just going to take this up because this is a very important piece. So this database, I think, is going to be very helpful. Let me find my, okay, there you go. So
Mhm.
acquisition.gov, it usually has everything listed. So basically there could be other sort of, way of approaching this in terms of research. So it has all the agencies listed. They have the link that leads you to their forecast page. So for example, we are just picking up housing and urban development here. I'm just going to go ahead and click on that.
Mhm.
And that should lead me to the page where they have the information saved. What I can also do, I could just go into their website. Let's just say if you don't have a lot of time, you can just go onto their website. I can just type in forecast and it should lead me to the page where they have the forecast mentioned. So it works almost a similar way for all the other agencies too. Let's just say if you don't see the agencies mentioned on that list of acquisition.gov, you can just go to their website, you can search. And once you open this report, and I think this report is wonderful in terms of providing a lot of different information. So for example, it gives you, basically all the good things to read. If you have time, you should definitely read it. And then you have, these are very important contacts. And our company is also a women-owned, small and diverse business, minority-owned corporation. So we do understand the importance of these contracts, and agencies are continuously spending money, spending resources to make sure that they have even more involvement from these small businesses. So the point of contacts that you see here, small business utilization specialists, they become your advocates within the agency. You build a good relationship with them. These are going to be the people, they would let you know, okay, connect with this person or connect with this individual, and I have this opportunity coming up as a small business set aside. So you can get a lot of good information and they are there to guide you. So I think looking at these point of contact is going to be very, very helpful.
Okay.
Procurement officers, so the way that I've seen the link happening, and I've done that in the cases of, I think, Federal Transit was that, or Federal Aviation. We built a very good relationship with the Small Business Utilization Office, and they kept on having, let's just say, a monthly update call with us. Well, I would just call them, right? I mean, hey, how are you doing? I just wanted to see if there's an opportunity coming and things like that. They would typically let you know that, hey, there's a conference happening. Hey, there's a roundtable happening. Why don't you come and join? So you can get those kind of relationship going. And in a lot of cases, these small and disadvantaged business utilization officers, they may refer you to another procurement officer. And when you are connecting with these procurement officers with a reference to somebody from within the organization, that means a lot. So I think you should simultaneously also look at building those relationships. It is very important.
So start with the liaisons and then go to the procurement officers?
You could do it either, but I think this is going to be easier.
Okay.
You could go directly to the contracting officer. You could go directly to the procurement officers. They would provide you the information. But I think going where this link is going to be very helpful.
Yeah, agreed.
Because that's what their KRA is in the real sense, right? Their main goal is to bring in all the people, all the small businesses together on the contract utilization.
Okay.
So let's look through the report and go through the question that you were talking about. And this is what I was mentioning here, that they do give a glossary of terms so people have a better understanding of some of these words that are usually mentioned in the contract or the forecast reports. So if you see here, they would typically mention a plan number. You could search the agency with either a plan number, or you could just go in and search what's going on. In here, if you'll see, they mentioned the NICS code. So either the NICS code or GSA schedule code, whatever there is. So from the NICS code, you can sort out if this opportunity is relevant to you. They would let you know what type of competition it is. If it is only for the small businesses, so you'll see here, it would typically say something like we compete or it's a new bid. So you would get to know whether or not this is a, there are already competitors working in that. You'll see typically a tentative date. In this case, you are looking at the tentative date and award date, both tentative in this case. How long is the contract? Who is the point of contact? I think this person is going to be very crucial. Connecting with these kind of individuals is going to be very important to understand. For example, right, we are looking at an old report. Let's look at something that's going to come up in future. Let's just say, okay, let's look at this one, right? So looks like this procurement is going to come up and it isn't planned as of yet, which means there are talks, but they are not ready to release the bid yet. So it might come up in August. If I was in a position of a small business, what I would do, I would connect with a point of contact as the first thing. I would find out who are the small business, individuals or folks there in the agency. I would connect with them. And I would typically take the reference of the forecast sheet that, hey, I've seen that you're going to come up with this kind of procurement. I was wondering where I can obtain more information about this. And then once you have the conversation flowing, you can kind of, share more about, okay, if this is this kind of procurement, once you have more information, you can let them know how your company can help. And to Antoinette's point, you can go ahead and secure either a sole source or, whatever kind of bid is going to be more feasible. This could be a simplified procurement for your company, depending upon if your solution is directly fitting in. So you could do that from this information.
Okay.
So it may be in Varsha, it may be that she focuses on specifically because this is a recompete, which means even with the recompete, they have to meet certain kind of subcontract requirements. Right. And she's going to be giving away $10 million to $50 million for the next 5 years. So this could be an opportunity that she focuses her attention on researching and getting information. So when she reaches out to Martha Bullock, she has that information and she's focusing on making this happen. And you're not all over the place. You're not inundated with all this information because I see that they're doing events planning support. This should be an opportunity for you.
Yeah.
There's no way. She's spending $50 million.
Yes, and the beauty of the recompete is that you're going to have a lot of past data. Past data, not only in terms of how the procurement has happened, but also in terms of how the vendors have been performing. Again, there's the public information. The agency ought to share that with you if you do request for it. And you can ask the reason for the recompete, like why are you releasing the bid again? What's the performance expectation from the current vendor? What is the challenge that you usually face with the current vendors? So there could be some very good talking point because if they are going through the recompete, I'm sure there's a good enough reason.
Yeah, that makes sense. Thank you.
And then they're doing multiple awards as well, right?
Right.
Right. So I'm thinking that your strategy as we wind down a webinar would be basically to focus on this and let us know what results. Varsha is going to be one of our business advisors. So we can set up time for you to sit and talk through things with her as well. So I would recommend, Varsha, if you could echo me on this, that you focus on this and let's focus on walking you through making sure that maybe something from this can happen.
Absolutely.
I'll be more than happy to do that.
Thank you. Thank you. So I can, Varsha, is there an email address or somewhere I can reach you or Antoinette, would you?
Sure, absolutely. I think Antoinette, we are yet to create like a WeOp address, but
I'm going to create a WeOp email for her. She just came on board and we just started doing the Pacesetter Labs because this is what she's doing for a company right now. She works for a women-owned small business. She's been sourcing for 5 years now for that particular company. Okay. So I'm going to set up her a WeOp email, share with you, and then you can let her know like what's going on. If you have other questions about trying to determine what the recompete information is, just kind of as you see an opportunity, let's try to exhaust that. Yeah. And then go to the next, because if you inundate yourself with all this information, you're going to get discouraged.
You already know we've been doing this for 4 years at this point, and I'm just like,
you probably didn't even see this opportunity up here.
No, I didn't see that. There is one that I have written in my notes to go back to. So there's another one should be on this forecast sheet. But I don't recall seeing that, and I don't have Martha Bullock's information. So,
So let's focus on just those two right now. Let's
yeah,
focus on how Varsha, you could echo. Let's just exhaust that before you move on to the next.
okay.
That's what I think we should
Awesome.
do. That's what I do with my grants. I see the opportunities and I call the
Mhm.
people I need to call and keep it until it's like, oh, this is nothing's gonna happen from it.
Mhm.
So I think that's, as we move forward with our Pacesetter labs, it's just for us to provide assistance with our business advisors, our specialists, and then exhaust that. And then we go on to just being strategic about your approach, basically.
Absolutely.
Right.
Thank
And
you.
once you go through, once you go through this couple of times, I can assure you this does become easy. It will come natural to you. You look at an opportunity, you would know exactly what kind of researches to do. So I think over the period of time, it's going to be very, very simple.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. I have another call I have to jump into.
Okay, thank you for
You
tuning.
take care.
See
Okay.
you.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Have a
Okay.
great night. Bye-bye.
Bye.